Tottenham Hotspur just beat Arsenal in Hong Kong 1-0. Pape Matar Sarr with an absolute banger of a goal from distance, and Thomas Frank wins his first North London derby, and it wasn't even in North London. What's going on, guys? My name is Nathan Robinson from CDO Spurs, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the match that Tottenham played against Arsenal in Hong Kong, and exactly how Thomas Frank and Spurs managed to outclass Arsenal in terms of tactics and formation and setup. Of course, be sure to drop a like and to subscribe for more amazing content, and we are on the road to 1K. We're almost at 800, guys. We're about like, what, 39 away from 800, so drop a like, drop a subscribe, and let's get right into the video. So obviously speaking, this game was not a game that counts for points, but it sure counted for pride. Thomas Frank and Tottenham and Arsenal clashed in Hong Kong, the first North London derby ever played outside of the UK. Now, say what you want about it, I'm not here for that debate, but the Hong Kong fans showed up, and Thomas Frank walked away with bragging rights, a clean sheet, and a tactical statement. So getting into the match, the only goal came from right before the end of the first half, and Pape Matar Sarr from nearly the halfway line picked Lewis Skelly's pocket and launched it over David Raya. It was absolutely beautiful, and it capped off a first half where Spurs hit the post 3 times. Arsenal had 16 shots and Spurs had about 6. XG says 1.03 to 0.34 in Arsenal's favor, but anyone who watched that game with their own eyes saw that this wasn't about who shot more. It was about structure, control, and exploiting space. So we're going to hop into the tactics board to break down exactly how Spurs managed to set up and how they got the best of Arsenal. But I want to give an honestly huge shout out to who else but Mohamed Kudus. Brother, this guy is absolutely insane, man. I genuinely cannot believe we got this signing, especially for that price. Honestly, fair play to the club. Fair play to Daniel Levy, because Mohamed Kudus is an absolute game changer for Spurs, man. I genuinely think, and this might be a hot take, but I genuinely think that Mohamed Kudus has potential to be one of Spurs' best signings in a long, long time. And I do think, and I'm making a really early prediction here, but I do think that Mohamed Kudus will be Spurs' player of the season. From what I've seen in preseason from him, he's been just, honestly, he's blew me away in terms of how he's played, in terms of his impact on games, his technical ability, and how much quality he has just as a player, the way his mind works. Spurs and Daniel Levy need to get some more quality around Mohamed Kudus, because a player of his quality can benefit massively from more quality players being around him. So yeah, Mohamed Kudus, once again, spectacular. Okay, so disclaimer, obviously, I'm not a tactico. I don't claim to be a tactico. I'm just giving my raw-based takes on what I saw from Spurs, so don't expect me to go in like the whole weeds. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is why like Richarlison did this. Like, nah, bro. Like, I'm breaking it down just how I saw it, and yeah, that's what's going to be. So, in possession, Thomas Frank used a pretty flexible 4-2-3-1, which is what we see him do under Spurs. And in defensive positions, though, it flattened into more of like a, I want to say like a 4-5-1. But the big thing that you have to understand here is that Spurs were pressing in terms of like traps. Like it wasn't an Ange press. Like they weren't pressing like crazy. They weren't all over the place. It was a very smart tactical press with Richarlison leading the line, and sometimes you would have Odobert popping up to cover for a Richarlison. Man, this is hard to move. You'd have Odobert popping up to cover for Richarlison in terms of the press when Arsenal had the ball and they're trying to play out the back, and they kind of interchange. You had Kudus popping up at the top as well, and Spurs are really effective with laying their traps in the press when Arsenal were trying to build up from the back. And because Spurs were so compact and narrow, it pretty much negated any chance of Lewis Skelly getting into any offensive positions. He was pretty much mitigated to damn near nothing. And then the midfield trio of Sarr, Bergvall, and Basuma pretty much allowed Spurs to be very compact and narrow as well, which forced Arsenal wide, which is exactly what Thomas Frank wanted. So a lot of the times what happened was whenever the ball would get out to like Lewis Skelly, you would instantly have Kudus stepping up immediately to either force the ball backwards or force the ball up into Martinelli. And then once that ball got to said Martinelli, Pedro Porro would step up immediately. Sarr would also be there too to have some support, which would force Martinelli to pass the ball back, and then the play is then recycled. So Spurs were so effective with laying traps and being really effective with their pressing. They're not just running around like madmen. It's a lot more tactical and calm with Thomas Frank's pressing. Also, another thing that's really, really cool about Thomas Frank's pressing is that I don't know if you guys noticed this, but whenever the ball would go into the midfield, you would instantly have Bergvall on him, you'd instantly have Sarr on him, and you'd instantly have Bentancur on them. I don't know how many times that we saw Sarr win the ball back, but this guy was all over Arsenal's midfield. So whenever that ball goes in the midfield, we're seeing the Spurs midfield be on him immediately. I'm seeing what Thomas Frank likes to do is he likes to keep the ball out wide. He says to Arsenal, all right, you guys can have the ball out wide. I don't care. Take the ball out wide. But what we're going to do, we're going to stay tight, compact, and we're not going to let you in. If the ball comes in the middle, what's going to happen is you're going to have Sarr on you. You're going to have Bergvall on you. You're going to have, well, that wasn't right. You're going to have Bentancur on you. Everyone's going to be pressing you in that midfield. And you also have Kudus and Odobert who would drop deep as well to cover. And Thomas Frank actually talked about in his press conference is the fact that even though Kudus does a lot of great work on the ball, a lot of the times we see Kudus tracking back a lot to come support Porro, to come take off Lewis Skelly if he's ever up. We saw a bunch of times where Kudus was able to win the ball back actually from the Arsenal players because he was tracking back really well. So it's something really cool that's good to see in Thomas Frank's system. Okay, so one thing that I do want to note is that Spurs played actually a pretty high line. So when Spurs had the ball, Kudus would tuck in a lot, which allowed Porro to overlap him and get crosses in. And then you had Kudus cutting inside, which is what you want him to do. And then on the other side, Odobert was used as a touchline winger. Now, the whole point of this video was the tactical solution that allowed Spurs to beat Arsenal. One of the biggest things, and I think this is what Spurs need to do in their transfer window, is that they had two technical wingers. Listen, this is huge, huge, huge for Spurs. And I think that if we focus on the wingers as a whole, this would mitigate the need for a good striker to come in if we sell Richarlison. I think that Spurs need to focus on a very technical, high-quality winger for this exact reason, because on the left, actually let's start with the right. On the right, you had Kudus doing his thing as usual, threatening, going inside, outside, dangerous balls in, popping up in these areas around here. Having Porro overlap him as well allowed Spurs to hold the width and then have Kudus to roam freely inside. But then on the left side, allowing Odobert to be the touchline winger gave Arsenal something different to think about. So each wing that Spurs had was offering something different. On the right wing, you had Porro overlapping and Kudus going inside, so you had two players to worry about here in terms of crosses coming in potentially, in terms of Kudus either having a shot or finding passes inside to the midfielder. And then on the left-hand side, you had Odobert just dribbling, doing his thing, going outside, going inside. And then you also had occasional times where Spence would overlap him to give Odobert another option. But I think having Odobert as a touchline winger gave Ben White and Arsenal a lot to think about. Because there's times where Odobert got to the back line and to get balls in deep over here too. So I think this situation and the setup is very good for Spurs. I think this is something that Spurs could look to capitalize off of going forward. So what we saw technically wasn't just about formation. It was about role and clarity. Sarr as a disruptor, Kudus as the engine, and Odobert as the wide threat. And the entire back line, particularly Van de Ven and Romero, stayed disciplined even with Arsenal chucking bodies forward. And I just want to bring it back to Kudus. So I'm going to read out some stats here for Mohamed Kudus. He had 8 possessions won, 3 fouls drawn, and 2 successful dribbles. And he works really hard off the ball as well. And I remember West Ham fans saying that, oh, Kudus is going to be lazy. oh, when Kudus gets pissed off, like, just don't worry about it. He's going to be, he's going to be lackluster. Brother, all I've seen from Kudus is that he's going to be our best player this upcoming season, and I honestly stand by that, man. Kudus is an absolute steal of a player, and I'm so happy he's on our team. Genuinely. So for me, Pape Sarr was the man of the match. A goal, 5 out of 5 tackles won, 12 duels, 2 fouls drawn, and nearly perfect passing. This wasn't just an audition for Pape Matar Sarr, man. This was a job application for that starting role. And I was actually talking about this on my stream, and the fact that a guy like Pape Sarr has a lot of work to do. Listen, he's a quality player, and he has a bright future. But the past season and a half, particularly last season mainly, let's be real, he wasn't good enough. So he has a big job and a big responsibility on his hands to win his job back and really stake his claim as the future of the Spurs midfield. And if Pape Sarr can keep putting up performances like this, as he has done in preseason, we're going to have an insane player on our hands, man. Genuinely. But again, this is still preseason, so you don't win trophies in July, or do you?
And Heung-min Son with a familiar feeling.
I guess Spurs lifted the Herbalgi trophy or something. I don't know, bro. But either way, that's another trophy in the trophy cabinet, so I'm not complaining. And Arsenal second again. We love it. Nah, but serious talk though, what this game ultimately shows is that the direction that Spurs are going in is a positive one. 2 wide creators, a mobile midfield, and a structured press. And here's the key. If Kudus and Odobert keep developing, Spurs won't need to spend a lot of money on a new striker. I think if the wingers are of a high technical standard, it almost mitigates the need for a high quality striker because the defenders are going to have to worry about 2 different attacking options and the striker can just pretty much feed. And as we've seen, I don't know if it's a Spurs thing or if it's a tactic thing, but for the past, well, going off of this preseason and last season as well, strikers in Spurs' teams aren't really getting the service that they need. So Thomas Frank's either going to have to figure that out or prioritize the wingers so that we can have the quality on the wings. So if Spurs sign a winger on the quality of Mohamed Kudus, and I'm going to throw out a name, let's say Rafael Leao. I don't know if we're going to get him, man. I don't know. But if Spurs going to level a winger on the level of Mohamed Kudus, then it almost mitigates the need for a top level striker. You can kind of kick that can down the road a little bit, and this season at least you can focus on the winger position, especially if we sell someone like Heung-min Son. And if we sell Son, we're gonna need someone to replace him. And the reason why I'm so big on a technical winger is for the fact that for some reason under Spurs, the striker position doesn't really get too much service. So what's the point of going big on that position if that player's not going to see the ball anyway? You know what I mean? So I think a winger option, a high quality winger option, is the way to go for Spurs this window. So yes, Spurs beat Arsenal. But the biggest win today was that we got clarity, identity, and progress under Thomas Frank. And if you want to know how he's making this team look this organized, click right here for my full breakdown on Thomas Frank's tactics. Trust me, this isn't a one-off win. It's the start of something real.